Even though the Denver Nuggets fell short in the second round for the second straight year, they weren't far from another finals run. They actually held a 10-point lead and a 2-1 series advantage over the eventual champion Thunder. That alone tells you just how close Denver really was. What makes it even wilder? They did it with one of the worst benches in NBA history, a second unit that was outscored by an insane 31 points per 100 possessions. No team survives that kind of weakness, and yet Denver still pushed the champs to the brink. That's why this season feels different. For the first time, the Nuggets have gone out and fixed their biggest flaw, depth. Later in this video, we'll break down exactly how they reloaded their bench and why this move might put them right back on top of the league. But let's be real. The biggest reason Denver will always be in the championship conversation comes down to one man, Nikola Jokic. Last season, Jokic put together yet another jaw-dropping campaign. He finished second in MVP voting while averaging 29.6 points, 12.7 rebounds, and 10.2 assists. Yes, a triple-double for the entire season. And somehow, he didn't even win the MVP. Oh, and just for fun, he added nearly 2 steals per game. If you think that's crazy, wait until you hear his shooting numbers. Jokic knocked down 42% from 3, including 2 ridiculous makes from beyond half court. Strip those out, and he was closer to 50% from deep, which basically makes a 7-footer one of the best shooters in basketball. And inside the arc? Forget about it. 63% on twos, using hooks, floaters, and fadeaways that make him impossible to guard one-on-one. But here's the kicker. Scoring isn't even his best skill. What separates Jokic from every other superstar is his playmaking vision. He doesn't just score, he bends defenses, creates shots nobody else sees, and makes every teammate around him dangerous. This is exactly why the NBA has a massive Jokic problem heading into 2025. Last season, Nikola Jokic wasn't just Denver's best player. He was the Denver Nuggets. The entire offensive system revolved around him, and the numbers prove it. Since 2017, he's consistently ranked in the 90th percentile or higher in usage rate. And last year, he reached the 97th percentile with a usage of 30.4%. That means nearly every possession, every decision, every action on offense flowed through Jokic. Of course, whenever Jokic racks up double-digit assists, critics love to throw around the stat padding narrative. But here's the thing, nothing could be further from the truth. His assists aren't empty numbers. They're the most impactful passes in the entire NBA. His teammates convert off his feeds more efficiently than off anyone else's. That's not just a one-season fluke either. Since 2019, Jokic has finished in the 100th percentile for assist percentage every single year. It's simply who he is, the best playmaker in the sport. And when you zoom out to his on-court impact, it's almost laughable how much he changes Denver's fortunes. With Jokic on the court last season, the Nuggets outscored opponents by 11.5 points per 100 possessions, ranking in the 94th percentile league-wide. Their offensive rating was a staggering 128.3, basically unstoppable. But when he sat, the Nuggets turned into one of the worst teams in the league. Their net rating cratered to minus 9.8 in just the 15th percentile. Their offense completely collapsed, managing only 106 points per 100 possessions, ranking them in the bottom 10% of the NBA. Without Jokic, they simply couldn't generate good looks, finishing with an effective field goal percentage of just 52%. So here's the reality. When Jokic plays, Denver looks unbeatable. When he doesn't, they look like the league's weakest roster. That's why Jokic is the best player in the NBA, because he's the only reason Denver even stays in the contender conversation. But that's also what makes this new season so exciting. For the first time, the Nuggets may have actually solved their biggest weakness, surviving the minutes when Jokic rests. If Denver can stabilize their play even slightly without him, this team could turn into the absolute best squad in basketball. Think about it. Last year's bench wasn't just bad, it was historically awful. One of the worst second units we've ever seen in a playoff team. Their bench had a shocking net rating of minus 31 whenever Jokic wasn't on the floor. That group simply couldn't shoot consistently, couldn't defend well enough, and couldn't keep the offense flowing. But this year, it's a completely different story. The Nuggets finally made real changes. First, Bruce Brown is back. He may not be the exact same player who helped them during their 2023 title run. He's battled injuries and bounced around the league since then, but in Denver's system, he doesn't have to be a star. He just needs to be himself, a strong defender, a smart passer, and a guy who can hit enough threes to keep defenses honest. That alone makes him a massive upgrade compared to what Denver rolled out last season. Then there's Tim Hardaway Jr. Now he's streaky. When he's off, he can feel like a liability. But when his jumper is falling, he can absolutely swing games. At the end of last season with the Pistons, we saw exactly how impactful he can be when his shot is on. If Denver gets even an average version of Hardaway Jr., he'll be a difference maker off the bench. And don't overlook Jonas Valanciunas. For the first time in years, Denver has a real backup big behind Jokic. That may not sound flashy, but it's huge. Having a capable reserve center means Jokic can actually rest during the regular season without the Nuggets instantly collapsing. That not only saves his energy for the playoffs, but also helps Denver keep opponents from going on massive runs every time he sits. There's also Peyton Watson. His defensive tools and athleticism are already NBA ready. And if he takes even a small step forward as a shooter, he becomes a legit two-way piece. As a cutter or lob threat next to Jokic, Watson has the potential to shine in a system that values movement and timing. Put it all together, and Denver's bench this season looks miles ahead of last year's disaster. Even if they're just middle of the pack league-wide or slightly below average, that's still a massive improvement. Why? Because more of Jokic's brilliance will actually translate into wins, instead of being erased every time he takes a breather. But here's where it gets even scarier for the league. It's not just the bench that improved. The starting five got stronger too. Cam Johnson is now in the mix, replacing Michael Porter Jr., and I think fans are going to be shocked at how well he fits with Jokic. Most people think of Johnson strictly as a spot-up shooter, but he's so much more than that. He's an underrated athlete, capable of finishing cuts and fast breaks. He gives Jokic another moving target instead of just another shooter planted in the corner. Defensively, Johnson is also an upgrade over Porter Jr. He's quicker, more disciplined, and brings more versatility on switches. And don't underestimate his off-the-dribble game either. In Brooklyn, Johnson flashed legit shot creation ability, hitting pull-ups and isolation jumpers. He won't get that many opportunities in Denver's offense, but imagine him coming off a Jokic screen, taking 2 dribbles, and pulling up in the mid-range or curling into a 3. That gives Denver a secondary weapon behind the Murray, Jokic two-man game, which has already been destroying defenses for years. And let's not forget, Denver starters were already elite. Last season, the lineup of Murray, Brown, Porter Jr., Gordon, and Jokic outscored opponents by 12.8 points per 100 possessions. Their offensive rating was a staggering 127.9. Yes, the defense wasn't elite, giving up 115.2 per 100. But in the playoffs, Denver always finds ways to lock in. They mix up coverages, sprinkle in zone, and raise their intensity. They've proven time and time again that they can be just good enough defensively to let their offense carry them to wins. So now imagine all of that, the best player in the world, one of the most dominant offenses ever, a stronger bench, and a starter upgrade in Cam Johnson. That's why this season feels different. The Nuggets have already shown they're good enough to hang with anyone, even with glaring flaws. They were a few possessions away from beating the eventual champion Thunder, and they did it with one of the worst benches we've ever seen. If that weakness is fixed, even just a little, Denver might not just be a contender. They might be the team nobody can stop. So the question heading into this season isn't just whether Nikola Jokic can keep dominating. We know he will. The real question is, what happens when the Nuggets finally give the best player in the world the support he deserves? Because if this roster is even slightly better than last year's, Denver might just build the best team in basketball. Beyond the bench upgrades and the addition of Cam Johnson, what really makes this Nuggets roster stand out is the balance they've found with their defensive glue guys. Denver has a true trio of two-way wings in Christian Braun, Aaron Gordon, and Bruce Brown. These three can all defend multiple positions, hit an open three when needed, cut hard off the ball, and finish in transition. They're versatile, unselfish, and playoff-proven. That combination makes them the perfect supporting cast for Nikola Jokic. So, when you look at Denver heading into this season, it isn't just the same group we've already seen succeed. They've given their MVP and offensive engine not only a stronger bench, but also a retooled starting five that may actually be better than before. That's why I believe Denver has a legitimate case to be the best team in the NBA next year. But to be fair, no team is without flaws. And while the Nuggets are elite, they do still come with a few concerns. Honestly, we're nitpicking here because of how good this roster looks, but if I had to point out three weaknesses, they'd be health, defense, and depth. Let's start with the obvious one, health. It's the same concern for every contender, but especially for Denver. If Nikola Jokic ever missed serious time, the entire system collapses. That's how dependent they are on him. It's not complicated. If Jokic goes down, Denver's title hopes go with him. The second concern is defense. For most of the Jokic era, the Nuggets have hovered between average and below average defensively in the regular season. To their credit, they usually tighten things up when the playoffs arrive, locking in with smarter rotations, zone looks, and playoff-level intensity. But the risk is always there that one year, the switch just won't flip. If Denver gets caught flat-footed defensively, they could get exposed by elite offensive teams. Even in the regular season, giving up too many points too often could hurt their seeding and force them into tough road series early. Still, because their offensive ceiling is so absurd, likely a top 3 unit again. And because Jokic is the best player in the world, I don't think defense is going to tank their season. At worst, they're still in line to be a top 3 seed in the West. Now the third concern, and probably the biggest one, is depth. Yes, Denver's bench is better this season, but compared to other contenders, it's still not elite. Last year, they really had 5.5 guys they trusted in the playoffs. This year, I think that number moves closer to 7 or 8. That's progress, but still not on the level of the deepest teams in the league. Take Tim Hardaway Jr., for example. He's a player who can swing a playoff game, but only if his jumper is falling. When he's hot, he's a real weapon. When he's cold, he's a liability you can't keep on the floor. Bruce Brown is another key piece. If he can get back to that energetic, athletic version of himself from the 2023 title run and knock down threes at around 34%, he's absolutely playoff trustworthy. But if his shooting falls off, his role gets murkier. Then there's Peyton Watson. Defensively, he's already outstanding, and I believe he'll get minutes no matter what. But whether he becomes truly reliable comes down to his jumper and his ability to finish at the rim. If he develops even an average outside shot, he could be a difference maker. Jonas Valanciunas is more complicated. He's a steady regular season backup, but in the playoffs, his lack of mobility could be a huge issue. He's slow laterally in pick-and-roll coverage and struggles to get up and down the court at playoff tempo. Maybe you can get 10 to 15 minutes from him in certain matchups, but against smaller, quicker teams, he'll likely get exposed. Julian Strawther is another question mark. His defense has to improve, and he needs to become steadier with the ball. Too often last season, he made shaky decisions in limited minutes. If he cleans that up, he can carve out a role as a floor spacer and secondary playmaker. So yes, Denver's bench is much improved compared to last year, but it still doesn't stack up against the depth of teams like Boston or even Oklahoma City. But here's the key, it doesn't have to. Denver doesn't need their bench to win them games. They just need them to be solid. They need stability. They need a second unit that can hold the line, keep opponents from going on massive runs, and protect the leads that Jokic and the starters build. That's the real window of opportunity. Because if the bench isn't just solid, but actually good, then Denver becomes nearly unstoppable. Imagine lineups with Jamal Murray and Cam Johnson leading a second unit, while Valanciunas acts as a handoff hub, flanked by shooters and cutters. That's a group that could legitimately be productive and keep Denver afloat while Jokic rests. And that's the wild card for this season. If the bench is passable, Denver is a contender. If the bench is good, Denver might be the best team in the NBA. Because let's not forget, Their starting five is already championship caliber. Murray, Johnson, Gordon, Braun, and Jokic form a unit that can outscore anyone. Add in Bruce Brown's versatility, Cam Johnson's fit, and Aaron Gordon's defense, and suddenly this looks like the most balanced Denver team of the Jokic era. So yes, the Nuggets have their concerns. Health is always a risk. Defense has been shaky in stretches, and depth is still a question mark. But when you weigh that against everything else, the MVP at the peak of his powers, one of the best defensive systems the league has ever seen, and real improvements to last year's weaknesses, you can see why this team might just have the highest ceiling in basketball. That's why I believe the Denver Nuggets could absolutely be the best team in the NBA next season. But they're not the only ones with a case. Another team that's quietly building something special is the New York Knicks. And if you want to see exactly why the Knicks could sneak into that conversation, check out my full breakdown. It's right here.